Welcome back to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Stecker from Oak Creek PD, 27 years in law enforcement. He leads major policing initiatives. He's managed critical incidents. He holds a master's of science in criminal justice administration. He is a graduate of the FBI National Academy, and he is active in regional and national law enforcement leadership through organizations like Milwaukee County Law Enforcement Executive Association, ICP, and several more. Really looking forward to this episode. So welcome to the show, Chief Stecker. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course, I'm looking forward to it. What I want to know, I was going through your bio, and I'm really interested, and I hope that you're, willing to share. But what was your childhood like? Who were you before you were Chief Stecker?
Well, I think I was like many other kids that, have an idea of what they'd like to do. It wasn't until I went to my first year of college and decided that originally what I wanted to do was criminal psychology. Thought it was very interesting and decided I don't want to sit at a desk my entire life. I want to go out and do things. And from there, I changed into let's get into law enforcement. And that's where everything started to steamroll from there. The funny thing that I always bring up is that I've now worked myself into a desk where I am here most of the time. But that came obviously later in my career. So really a lot of those different things that impact along the way. I also grew up, and I think I've had a lot of impact, or what I think I've been able to impact with being around a lot of domestic issues growing up, drugs and alcoholism growing up, mental health problems growing up, and seeing and dealing with some of those things that you don't really realize are impacting you until you're away from those things and you start to see what maybe normal should be out in society, and make those changes to yourself and, how you want to impact those around you, especially your family that you're hopefully one day, or as I did, have grow up to bring them all up a certain way. So I think a lot of that helped shape and impact me as I moved forward. And I think my biggest thing too is seeing some of the law enforcement when I was younger, a lot of that being there to help. But I saw some too where I wasn't sure that it was all on the above board, up and up thing. So one of the biggest things I've always tried to be a part of is be the change that I want to see in the world. So the best way for me to affect those changes was to be a part of those changes. And I've also looked at my career that whole way too, is if there's things going on within your department that you don't like, it's easy to complain or be a part of the solution and help make those changes moving forward.
I'm a really big fan of solution-based conversations, and I have to check myself periodically to ask myself, am I being a part of the solution, or am I just feeding into the challenges or the problem? And I think when we can have that North Star of like, hey, we want to be a part of that solution, we want to move things forward. So what are the conversations and what are the actions and implementations that we have to do in order for that to happen? I find it really interesting because, I think that you and I can relate on a certain level with our childhood upbringing. I too came from a similar family environment with drugs and domestic violence. And I too was really interested in psychology. And I wonder if maybe there's something like in us, that we were, kind of interested in understanding the why behind things that happen and why people behave in the way that they do because we came from that environment.
I think that might be a part of it. And maybe it's that's part of the environment. But I've also seen it a little bit differently where it's just I'm an inquisitive person to begin with. Mm-hmm. I like to know the why. As my wife will put it, she likes to read books for entertainment, where I would rather read like a manual on how something works and how it operates. I like that part of it. I like the historical aspects of watching or learning about history. I like to, as probably a similar one of, how it works on discovery. That interests me. So I think it's the why do things tick, and, from society, or why do people do those things? For me, that's just a natural curiosity, I think.
Yeah. Well, if you like reading manuals, then I think you're probably in the right job.
We do a lot with the law and a lot of black and whiteness, yes.
For sure. I wanted to circle back to something you said earlier about maybe not knowing the environment you're in until you see the other side of things. And I've had this happen a couple times in my life, and I don't know if you can relate to this, but of course, when you grow up in that environment, you're like, this is normal. And you maybe see friends, families, and you understand that maybe it's not, but it's still not your reality. And so I think that we're highly adaptable as humans, and we kind of adapt to the environment that we're in. But I've also, in a wellness perspective, have had times in my life where I didn't realize how horrible I felt because I wasn't treating myself well. I was eating poorly. There was a period of time where I was really rebellious and I was drinking a lot. I was smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, and I didn't realize how bad I felt until I started prioritizing myself. And I was like, whoa, there's another side of this where you can feel better and do better. And I think it's really interesting how adaptable we are. And sometimes we don't know the other side until, we put in the effort to reach it.
I think that kind of goes along. I had a supervisor tell me several years ago, I think I was a lieutenant at the time, you don't know what you don't know.
Mm.
And that's absolutely true. I think our role is, number one, we know what we're used to, or what's around us. What ends up happening, though, is hopefully we're exposed to different things, and that gives us a different perspective. And I think for most of us, to have that free will, to have that thought pattern, to look at those things and say, oh, but why is it that way then? I was used to it this way, but what about that? And then I think it's that natural, okay, well, which one's correct?
Mm-hmm.
Or what's good for me? You know, coping for different things, there's different ways to cope. Sometimes you see people coping through drugs and alcohol. It may be through other habits that are a little bit more dangerous, instead of okay, well, I'm going to cope by going for a walk or going for a run, working out, having some of those healthy lifestyle choices instead of going down a different road. And sometimes that's just what or what you're used to until you're shown a different pathway.
Mm-hmm.
But with all of us, we have to make that decision to take that pathway. And that's not what all of us do at times.
Yeah. And I think we could probably talk for a long time about this because I've put a lot of thought and I've had a lot of conversations with other chiefs about, what makes someone one way and someone another way, and you see like even these studies that were done with like twins, and one person becomes an addict and the other person doesn't, but they have the same household, the same nurture, and so what makes one person different than the other? But what you said that I've always tried to live by as much as I could is this idea that we have the power and the ability to take responsibility and accountability for our choices, and everything that we do is a choice. And I think that, I've been guilty of both. I've definitely have chosen poorly, and I have played the blame game and blamed my circumstances and blamed, my influences and all the things. But I've also done the opposite, where I've taken that into my own control and said, no, like I'm going to choose to do this, and I have the ability to do so. And I think that we don't sometimes give ourselves enough credit for our ability to change and to choose.
I think those are all very astute, accurate comments. It is about choice. And sometimes we want to make the easy one because that's our human nature to do it. Anything that takes, effort, especially on our part, is we just want something to automatically happen, whether that's, starting a new workout routine and it's, so I've been doing this for 2 weeks now, where are the results? Well, that's not how these things happen. But I think that as humans, we're very moldable, pliable on what we want to do, but it's really I think certain people or people just have different varying abilities or capacities for what that pliableness is. And if you put your mind to it, that's what you're going to do. But it's really getting through that, initial stage to start making it a habit to get to that point where then it's your norm. It becomes your norm, but breaking those old norms are hard to do.
Yeah. And I like this conversation of it being like training. And just like you train your body, you can train your mind, but there has to be a certain level of awareness first, to your point of you don't know what you don't know. But
Right.
I think that we, can put in place certain exercises and certain routines that help us to train our brains and train our bodies to get the results that we're looking for.
So I was just having a conversation with a employee not too long ago, and we were talking about working out. And I think what we always look at that is I'm doing this physical workout, and there is definitely a mind body connection. It's the old, and it's in a current commercial that's out there. If you think you can or you think you can't, you're correct. If you've already established that you can't do something, you're not going to be able to uh, do that and get through it. But one of the things that we were talking about is we do a lot to focus on our physical health. What we fail to do at times is deal with our mental health, that emotional health. And what I tried to use as an explanation of it is whether you're religious or not, I'm a very spiritual person, I believe. And I believe there's a bigger thing out there, bigger purpose, whatever it might be, that I wouldn't be going through what I am going through right now if I couldn't handle it.
Mm.
Sometimes that sets a new bar. And sometimes after that, you got to look back and go, now that I made that through there, I'm below that new established threshold. No different than you're like, I hit a new maximum amount for whatever weight uh, exercise that you're doing at that time. So I explained it to this employee of like Lake Mead at the Hoover Dam, and you see all those different watermarks that go up and down. Sometimes that's you looking back, and sometimes we need to do those reflective things back, not just for our own mental health, but our emotional health as well, and go, man, that was a tough time, but I made it through it. I know I can get through that again if that's where it is. And sometimes we get pushed to that next level. So it's okay, now I had to do a little bit more this time, but I'm going to get through that. But that's part of that, also that mental connection of just going, I'm going to get through this. Yes, this is tough. It sucks right now, whatever it might be, but we're going to get through this one way or another. How do we do that? I think that's different for every single person. For some people, it's my church is going to the gym. I like to run or whatever it might be. Having those different resources, whether it's talking to coworkers, having a family member to be able to talk to. I'm very, I think, blessed in that case because my wife is also in the first responder type services. She's a nurse. So having some of that, what we tend to have at times, very dark humor. I don't look at like what's wrong with you for saying that. I get it. Let's talk about it. And she has those same things that we then can talk about. My brother-in-law is a firefighter, so it's very easy for us to sit down and have those conversations back and forth, or trusted people here. Now, what we've done even further than that here at our police department, it's been many years. We just continue to build upon that. Is we have what we call now is a career support group. It used to be a career survival, but I think as you and I talked about that previously was I don't want to see people just survive their career. I want to see you get through your career, thrive, and have a happy and healthy retirement. I don't want you to be broken at the end of this, whether that's physically or mentally, emotionally. And all too often, all we do is focus on that physical part, but that mental part can definitely impact the physical aspects of that.
Yeah, there's so many things I want to dive into. One of the things that popped in my head while you were talking is like, I really want to be a fly on the wall at the dinner table with you guys razzing each other back and forth between like who's better, fire or pee, you know?
No, we
Um,
love each other. We definitely give each other shots across the bow, but at
yeah.
the end of the day, it's all love.
For sure. One of the things I wanted to go back to is this concept that you were talking about is this confidence in your own ability to do things, right? And there's this question. Have you heard this before? They say when a bird lands on a branch, do they trust the branch or do they trust their wings?
I have heard that before.
Yeah. And it's this idea that like they're trusting themselves, right? Because if that branch breaks, they know that they can fly, right? They have the confidence in their ability to survive that. And so, and I love that you said thrive, and I want to talk about that too. But you have to have confidence in your own ability to do things. And the more you accomplish things, the more you do things, the more confidence you have that you can do things. So it's this domino effect that happens, right? Like maybe that bird, the very first time it lands on the branch, it's like, oh, if this branch breaks, what am I going to do? And then the branch breaks and it flies, and it's like, oh, okay, now I know I can do that. So what's next? And I think about this sometimes in like simple terms of like, maybe you haven't worked out in a while, and maybe you go to the gym and maybe you have a trainer or you do like a HIIT class or, CrossFit or whatever, and you think like, man, I don't think I can do this. And then you get to the end of the class and you're like, wow, I did it. Now that threshold, to your point, is higher than when you stepped into the gym in the first place, because now you know that you have the ability to do it. And now we're going to keep raising that bar until hopefully never we keep raising that bar, because there's always room for improvement, always. But I agree with you for the concept of, we have to keep raising that bar, and it's quality of life. It's not surviving. And of course, that is bare minimum. We want everyone to survive. We want everyone to get to the end of their career and have a long life into retirement. But what is the point if you don't have quality of life, if you're not thriving in all areas of your life, wellness being one of those? Can you dive a little bit more into kind of that initiative that you started? What is it exactly? What is the why behind it? And what are you seeing?
Uh, as it relates to like our mental health programs here at the police department, is if
Yeah.
I'm understanding you correctly. Okay.
Yeah.
So, as we talk about, and we kind of talked a little bit earlier as well, having that ability to say the why, but also bringing along the rest of your team with you.
Mm.
It's the, rising the tide raises all ships. And that's what we want to do at that point. So we're explaining why we do what we do for that next generation to hopefully take that as their starting point and move on from there. As soon as we start looking at and sitting back on our laurels to say, hey, this is good, we're good enough, you're already starting to become obsolete in what you're doing and behind the curve. So it's that constant look to improve. Now, I know that I've always kind of done that, and I drive people crazy because of that, but it's okay, we're done. Let's start over. Let's start working on it again. A lot of these things were started either way before I was in positions to affect change on those, or it was right towards that point. So we've had our career survival, now career support group for many years. It's taken different roles. We do different things. We try to have several events through the year to give our employees a chance to come together and have those discussions. So we just had a winter time event, which is a movie night, which we're like, bring your kids in. We have popcorn. We set that all up. We have an Easter egg hunt coming up here in the next month or so for, again, the families to come together. We have a family or employee picnic in fall. So usually early October that we all get together for that as well and have some games. Just give everyone an opportunity to not be at work and have those connections made, just not with each other, but make sure that our employees' families know that, hey, whatever's going on, it's not just you. There's 100 other people here that are having similar situations. And if that's happening here, it's happening at police departments, fire departments, hospitals across the nation where there's other people that you can rely on or maybe have that discussion with to get some input on how they manage their stress and day-to-day things that are going on. And then we had at the beginning of December breakfast with Santa, and we do a little small breakfast. We have someone come in as Santa, and it's good for the kids as well. So we just try and have multiple opportunities for people to be involved, and that's just on that front side. The group also knows or hears about like if something's going on, and they'll reach out to that employee, whether it's a critical incident that just happened that may be stressful, especially for some of our newer officers to go, okay, not necessarily a debrief, but I'm just checking in with you. How are you doing? You had a tough call. Um, or to the point where similarly, I just had a death in the family and it was a reach out. Hey, we're thinking of you during this time. So there's that constant need for those things to go on and support each other. Now, one of the bigger things that we've done is our neck up checkups, which we require everyone here to go through once a year. You sit down with the counselor. You can talk about whatever you'd like to talk about. Nothing comes back to the police department or me. This is a confidential conversation between you and a certified therapist or counselor. Mm-hmm. Now, we've been going, this will be our third year that we're going in, third or fourth year that we're going into it. It was initiated when my predecessor, previous chief, was here. But I was definitely a part of that from our admin team to try and get that budgeted and fight for that. And we've continued to build on those things to make sure that we have those. Now, that's just a stepping stone. We're doing, in my opinion, the bare minimum to say, we care about you. We're trying to make sure that you have an opportunity every year. But I don't want it to be the end all be all to what it is and go, hey, I'm perfectly fine now because I talk to one person one time a year and that's all I need to do. That may be fine for most. I don't know what else you may have going on necessarily in your private life. So there may be things not only at work, but private life that you may need to seek out someone to talk to. And that's great and fine. We're just trying to give you that launch pad to do so because we're caring and we're making sure that it's there. But you also have to do a little work for yourself. It's not all on us to make sure we're getting you there 12 times a year to do whatever it might be to maintain that healthy, emotional and mental state for yourself. So there is some of that lead the horse to water and let it drink, and they've got to do some more. We just can't do everything, and I can't force anybody. No different than if I was like, I'm making you work out. I can't make anybody work out. We can give you the opportunities for it, but you've got to be the one to do that as well. Put that effort and time into it.
Yeah. It's a partnership.
Correct.
Yeah. I appreciate you bringing, there's a couple of things I want to bring up, but one of them is you were really talking about the other side of the coin. So I think a lot of times when we talk about wellness, we talk about all like wellness and support at work. And you said this a couple times throughout what you just said, that you guys have families, you have other things going on, maybe you have a death in the family, something that's really hard. And I've had other conversations where leadership really didn't know, like when they experience those things, they're like, how do I show up at work when I've gone through this really hard thing? And, how do you separate those things? And you really can't completely separate. One bleeds into the other. And do you think that this conversation, or maybe even the resources that are provided, that we maybe forget about the personal side of each person? And do you think that there are better things that can be done to be more supportive of home life?
I think that we do our best. Now, there's certain things that I just can't. It would be very easy for everyone to work first shift Monday through Friday, no weekends. And that just isn't, it's not possible in our jobs, but having this place has always been my second family. So having that type of environment, my biggest thing that I learned very early on as a supervisor, and I've had those conversations with all of my supervisors since, you're not just managing what's going out on the street and these calls that are going on. You're managing however many people on your shift, that many different personalities with that many different things that are going on in their day before and after they come here. So really being, in tune, in connection, whatever it is with your people, because those are the things you'll start to pick up is like, okay, Officer Smith now is just acting a little different. Let me go talk to him. Hey, is everything okay? What can I help you with? There might be something that we can do that day to help modify their job and make it a little bit easier. There's nothing. So typically we ride around in single officer squads. That might be a perfect opportunity to say, I'm going to put you in a two-man squad today, and we're going to deal with some of that, what we have going on today. But what I think it really boils back down into is two things that I've done some research on it, and I think it's an important thing. It's really a survival thing of our job is detachment and compartmentalization. In law enforcement, especially, and I'll say fire's the same, probably is the same in ERs when you roll into them. We get very good at detaching from reality and what's going on to deal with that thing that's going on at that point. We'll compartmentalize it because if I'm in a critical incident that's going on and I have my own staff that may be injured, critically injured, I can't stop doing the bigger mission of what's going on. I have to get somebody to deal with that and deal with the rest. If we're talking, like an active shooter, active killing type of event where we have to deal with that here and now. The problem is that in a lot of our jobs for many years, we were really good at just putting it in a box over here and saying, I'm not going to deal with it now anymore. Or it's been a couple of days. I haven't had to deal with it. We're just going to shove it to the side. Those things don't go away. They just stack up and build up wherever you're putting them at. So when we're done with the compartmentalization and the detachment from it, we still have to go back and say, let me deal with that now mentally and emotionally and get through that so that I can now be secure and safe or back to my normal baseline in dealing with those things. Because if you don't, it's eventually going to come out. And when it eventually comes out, you don't get to pick and choose when and how it's going to come out. And it usually comes out in a very ugly way. So we just need to make sure that we are taking that time to do so. And I've, fortunately had some of those critical events that I've either been a part of, helped investigate directly after, or been, involved as it's going on. And sometimes some of those it's days later because it's the I have to do X, Y, and Z, and in that mission type of mindset of getting those things done. And now it's the okay, let's stop. It's been a couple of days. I need to talk about this and I need to get it out. Thankfully, through the years and learning of how to deal with this, I know kind of how I operate. And sometimes it's the I don't want to talk about it right then that day when it's fresh. I need a day or two to process it internally, and now let's sit down and talk about it externally. So I think those things are very important, but it's again, some people are comfortable doing that with their significant other or people that they trust that they may be near to in maybe the same department, maybe a neighboring department, whatever it might be, or maybe they feel more confident going to a professional to do those things, and that's probably our biggest thing. I'm a I'm a young Gen Xer, so I come from the suck it up, rub some dirt on it, and move on. Um, I think that the newer generations do such a better job of understanding and wrapping their arms around the it's okay to go talk to somebody. I'm still part of that old school part where I appreciate it and I know that I probably should, but at the same time I'm almost like that's not for me. I don't need to do that. And it's not that I haven't, it's just that it's a weird mindset to get out of, especially when it's a generational thing that's formed over decades of this is just how we deal with those things. So, my hat goes off to our newer generations that are definitely a lot more accepting and in tune with that. And that was my biggest worry when we started with our neck up checkups is having I like to famously call out the Marshawn Lynch for when he was during the Super Bowl or having to talk to the media was I'm just paid because I have to be here, or I'm just here because I have to be here. I don't want to get fined. I was worried we'd have some of our more seasoned, experienced officers made to go to these sessions and be like, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just here.
Mhm.
To my surprise, we had overwhelming acceptance of it. And some of those officers at that time were the came to me afterwards and said, thanks for doing this. I'm like, I'm glad that it works for whoever it works for. That's fantastic. It just is one of those things that I'm becoming one of the older dinosaurs, and I'm not that old in my profession. At some point, that happens, and I'm just glad that it's received. I'm glad we're at a better point in society where that's not such a stigma, if you will, that's associated with it, and it's become more of a norm.
Yeah. There's two things I want to say on this, and I think I'm going to make a little bit of an argument, not against you, but just in
Sure.
general. So, one, I think what you just said is a testament to the fact that sometimes we have like maybe our own limited thought processes, right? We're like, I don't know if people are going to use it, like, or they're not going to use it. And I hear that all the time. They're like, yeah, we're not going to do that because they're not going to use it. But you had the experience of being like, I don't know if they're going to use it, but we're going to do it anyway. And then you were surprised by the fact that they used it. And so I think that it's a really good message to say, like, don't be afraid to try things just because you think that maybe people won't use it or won't benefit from it, because that might not be true, but you never know until you try it. And so, but the argument that I'm going to make is I think that the younger generation are more open and receptive to these things because of your generation propping them up and showing them the importance of these things. It goes back to you said you don't know what we don't know. Because you as leadership are now having these conversations, are now putting in place these resources, are now like showing them the importance of this. Now they understand the why and the importance, and they're able to run with it. And so I think that you guys have to give yourselves a little bit more credit that maybe you still have that thought process of, the old school mentality of like, oh, it's not for me. But everything that you're doing right now is setting them up for success. And I think that's why they're more receptive, is because of the efforts of you guys.
I think it is, and I think it's, being open and listening to your people as well. And I don't think there was as much in, using the analogy as he does the bird landing on the branch. It's the, there's a trust element there. There's a hope or it should work. And you don't know until you actually launch or try to land to say, okay, it did work. And in this case, it worked very successfully. And I'm glad that it did. And I think all of our people are glad that it did. It's one of the things that probably keeps getting brought up of thanks for doing this. And I have to keep reminding people I may be the one here doing it now, but this didn't start with me. I just took that baton and let's keep running to that next step. And that's ultimately what I think all of our jobs are, is to just, again, not sit back and say, hey, we're good enough. It's what can we do next? Cool. This worked. Let's try this.
Yeah. And I think that no matter what generation it is, whether it's the next generation or the generation that's coming up, behind them, I think the goal should always be, how can you make things better? Because there's going to be something that this younger generation sees that they're like, man, I wish I would have known this. And now they're going to help, the next generation to be better. And so to your point of passing on the baton, it's like, how can you just do your best to evolve and to understand that maybe the generation before you or your generation didn't know these things. It wasn't a part of the conversation, but now it is. And now that it is, the next generation is going to prioritize it. And then there's going to be other things that pop up that they're like, dang it, we didn't know this, And so it's
Yeah.
ever evolving.
I think that you have that not just in our generations that we see through time and through society. That's always what the next or leapfrog a generation on that is. They're doing it because of how it worked or it didn't work for the previous generation, and they react to that. The hope is within law enforcement, we're doing the same thing. It's, this has been something that's been brought up or wasn't a great thing, or maybe it was a good thing. And it should always be that, how can we improve on that? Okay, we were doing it this way. How can we improve on that to make it more effective and efficient moving forward?
Mhm.
It really doesn't matter how big or small it is. And sometimes it's a lot of those small things that are just as impactful as that one big thing.
One of the things that I hear a lot is almost a complaint about the younger generation. And it's always, man, they just ask why so much. Like they're just always asking why. And you told me offline, I had asked you, what was one of the best things that happened to you today? And you shared a story with me, and we got to talking a little bit. And I found out that you like the why. You really encourage people to ask the why. Why do you have that mentality of the why being positive when maybe some other people think that it's maybe a little bit annoying?
So I'm a why asker myself. So I
Yeah.
understand and appreciate it. I think that's probably where it's rooted in. But I've always believed that it's important for people to understand why it is what they're doing and not just, I just blindly do this because this is what I'm told to do, or this is what a policy or procedure is for. There's reasons behind that. And, not to get into well, this policy is written because this person did this and we decided that's not a great thing. I'm the reason some policies have been changed or critical incident manuals here at our department have been created or changed because sometimes we come across stuff and we don't understand, number one, how to do it. So what we do is we pull off of prior experiences and go, what is this like so that I can try to get through this time? Um, there are times where, like I said earlier, we're paramilitary. So there's a time and a place for the why. That might be, I need you to go do this now because we're in the middle of something critical. But as soon as it's done, I will wrap back with that person and say, okay, I told you to do X, Y, and Z, and I didn't have time to explain why. Here's why you did that. I want them to understand the background because it empowers them. It's going to make them better next time. And when it happens again, I might not even have to tell them to go do it because they'll see it unfolding because they've gone through that and start to react to that or take action right away instead of going, I have to wait for someone to tell me to do this because I have to be given an order. And I think our people are all very intelligent, in tune that as soon as they know the whys, they can start to do those things on themselves. It's almost like, going through and explaining those whys or using scenario based training is probably a very big one. And I'm a trainer, so I appreciate those scenario based things. I don't have to go through every type of incident that's out there to get experience through it. I can do that through scenario based. I can do that from some of the older, more experienced officers explaining what they've gone to in their career and how they've dealt with that. There is no reason for each of us to have to, so to speak, go up to the hot stove, put our hand on it and go, that's hot. I probably shouldn't touch it.
Mm.
There's different ways to go about that, and us teaching each other and telling the why is one of those teaching moments. I believe that there's a lot that can go into that teaching, explaining why, whichever way you want to look at that, that is beneficial up front. Me spending a couple minutes up front to explain the whys is going to pay dividends down the road because I'm not explaining that every single time. I'm not telling people to do things every single time because they know the why and they pick up on that and they just do it then moving forward.
Yeah. I have a philosophy for positive forward momentum or positive change. And I think it's a three-step process. The first is awareness, the second one is education, and the third one is implementation. And so, to your point, if we're constantly aware of what's going on, and then we're educating ourselves as to why or how or what are the resources that can help us, then we can start to take action and implement things that are going to be the best way forward. And to your point, I think that, and everyone can relate to this because I've heard this probably 300 times, but it's like, yeah, it was just, that's the way we did it. So do it because that's the way it's always been done. And when you start to dissect it and you start to look at it and you ask yourself, well, is that the best way to do it? Yes or no? And if it is, why is it the best way? And if it's not, then okay, well, what are the things that we can do to make it better? And so I think that the first step is having that awareness. And I think that to your point, right now, I think there are a lot of people who are super aware of what's going on and then asking the why and then identifying what are the steps forward. And then the third one and most important is then you have to actually do it, right? To make it better. Um, I wanted to ask you your opinion on this because, obviously you came from a challenging childhood. You had a perspective of what law enforcement looked like, both good and bad. You said like there are a lot of people who are there to help, and then some things that you're like, I don't know. And then you're like, I wanted to be a change maker. I wanted to be, a part of the solution. You've been now in this career over 20, 27 total years. Um,
Correct.
and so, you've been through a lot, both professionally and personally. Are you in a way almost grateful for the adversities that you had been through because it shaped who you are today and how you lead? Or what is your perspective on hardship?
So I think it definitely builds different character traits along the way. And I don't know. I guess this is one of those I don't know what I don't know, because if those weren't there, would I have those same character traits? Would I have the resiliency that I think I've built fairly well during that time? And I don't think that I would. I don't know that I would. I've been asked, I was asked by a coworker years ago, well, do you regret those things then? I'm like, well, I don't regret those things because they've shaped who I am today. And if I didn't have those, I don't think I'd still be who I am today with the traits that I have. Um, I also don't think that necessarily people should have to go through those if they don't have to. So that's really the dichotomy of that. I think these things have built those resiliency and character traits within myself. But if you don't go through some of those things, I don't think that you build those as strong. And that's probably the biggest thing I see coming up with our newer generation is they don't have or don't appear to have that same resiliency that maybe some of us did in our older generations. And that's a difficult thing to teach.
Mm.
Um, you really have to go through some stuff, get some time, and maybe you start to learn that after having some time on the job and go, oh, I went through these things. I've seen some stuff now, and now I'm starting to build those. And I think that we all do. It's just, at what part and what time in life does that launch take off where you're like, those things click now, where sometimes it's later in life for some of us, sometimes it's earlier.
Yeah.
Um, it's a tough one to say, but I don't regret it. And I kind of at the same time, I'm glad that it was me because then someone else didn't have to.
Yeah, I do think it's a tricky subject and it's a little bit of a double-edged sword to your point. And I don't have kids yet, hopefully one day, but I kind of think of it that way of like, man, like would I want my kids to go through what I went through? Like, no way. But do I want my kids to be able to go through hard things, and have confidence in themselves to be able to overcome adversities that come their way. Because I think it's inevitable that we're going to go through hard stuff. There's
Right.
no one that I know, there's always varying levels, but there's no one that I know who goes through this life without heartache and, stress. And um, I think that the one thing that I value a lot is just the ability to be open to failure and not afraid of tripping and falling and not afraid of change or things that are going to come your way, and having that confidence that we talked about before in yourself to overcome it and to get through the storm. I always tell everyone the only way out is through. So like, how can you develop yourself in a way where, you almost encourage some of the failures in a sense, obviously like not big ones. But, for me, like every time I have tripped and fallen flat on my face and sometimes even publicly, like, doing a presentation or whatever, and you're like, wow, that didn't go very well. And, that was horrible. There's always growth and learning that comes from those things. And so I think that what I'm seeing is that there are people who are so afraid to fail that they don't try. And it's like, for me, that's the biggest failure of all, is to get to the end of this and be like, man, I didn't even take my shot.
Sure. And I think there's a lot that you've got just talked about to really unpack from just that short narrative that you've given. It's I'm sure that you've heard, the difference between cattle and a buffalo when a storm's coming.
Yep.
And cattle will see the storm coming and they'll try to outpace it, which they never will. And they end up being in the storm longer than they should have. Where a buffalo will see it coming and they'll head straight into it, knowing that the only way is through it. And through it, many times, taking it head on is the shorter path.
Yep.
I guess that's the best thing that we want for all of our peoples. We don't want anybody to fail. I don't think there's anyone out there that truly wants someone else to fail. When it comes to your children, you really don't want to see them fail. But it's a part of life. You know that they have to. You're hoping that the failure is small enough where they rebound and they'll learn from it and then continue on.
Yeah.
I think that's part of, I can speak for myself on that. It might be for you as well, where it's some of those upbringing traits and where you're at, that resiliency is, I've gotten a very hard head over the years. I've been told no way more times than I've been told yes. And I try to remind my staff of that. I didn't get to be chief or in this position because I've been told yes every single time. I've been told no, and then I had to figure out a different way to do it. Either I'm going to keep attacking that and I'm going to finally get through the wall, or I'm going to find a way over it, under it, or around it. And I think that is what really helps with some of those things, to go, I'm going to now critically look at this. I'm going to take a step back so that I can see everything and go, what are different ways that I can attack this? My goal's still over there, but plan A didn't work. Let's go to B or C or D. I'm going to keep hitting this until it finally works out, or I wear the person down, whatever it's going to be. But that's really that tenacity, that resiliency to bounce back and say, well, I'm not done yet. You may think that I've failed and I'm back. I'm just regrouping and trying to find a different way to attack this.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, what I think is a part of that, and why, and it's not all lacking, I just think it's a little more lacking in some of our younger generations, is we don't have as many of the I'm trying out for something and being told no for the football team, the cheer team, or whatever it might be. Sometimes it's just, well, everyone's on because we want to be inclusive. And I can appreciate that. But at the same time, the other side of that coin is, it doesn't build that character to say, what do I got to do to come back to be better for next time?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I agree with everything that you said. I'm like shaking my head yes, like as you're talking about it. And I wonder if that ability to zoom out comes with experience. I think about it, this is so silly. My brain works like in really weird ways, but I used to be a professional skydiver. And when you first start skydiving, you have this helmet on, right? And your vision is like pinpoint, like you're so focused on what is in front of you. And as you become more experienced, now you can see like almost a 360 view, right? Head on a swivel. You can see like the mountains off in the range. Like I could tell you exactly where I'm pointed. Like there's just such more visibility into the surroundings and what's going on. Then I had an experience where I was asked if I wanted to go into a burn house at our fire department. And so they gear me up, right? And they put me in the breathing mechanism. And I felt once again, like, oh my gosh, like I am so tunnel visioned right now. And I don't have any, visuals of my surroundings. And I wonder if, as you're new with anything, you kind of come back to that, very narrow line of sight. And then as you gain experience and comfortability within that space, you're able to have the ability to zoom out and identify different things that maybe you didn't see before. And so I don't know, and maybe you can give me your perspective if maybe the younger people have even the ability to do that in the moment when they're so, narrow focus on what's going on. And maybe it takes time to be able to zoom out and identify those things.
I think that it's probably multiple things. I think the first component may be that experience component. How did I get experience? Is this the very first time I'm doing this or something like it? And I think that we do a very good job in law enforcement. I think we do a really good job about it here at our police department, is that not just training, but I'm going to put you through some training that's stressful in an environment that's safe to get you to be able to move through those things. Tony Blauer, who's a martial artist trainer, calls that stress inoculation training. So we try to do that to be like, hey, I've done this so many times now, it's almost second nature. But what I think you start to see is those blinders, as you've said, kind of open up. And what that does for all of us is I think also allows, how do you deal with stress? If anytime stress is in it, do you immediately just go, oh my God, I'm tunnel vision down? Do you get time dysmorphia? Does time speed up? Does it slow down? For me, it's always when those adrenaline times happen, time tends to slow down. And I can start to pick those things out and see it. I don't know if that's just how my brain is wired. I don't know if that's something that's gone through. I don't know if it's more because I'm a visual learner and that's just how I pick things up and I pick them apart. But I think there's a lot of other things that go into it. I just saw something the other day of, which I think is odd to me. I have an internal monologue and some people don't. So we hear that people don't have that is odd. I can go into a full color picturing in my mind of what's going on and pick it apart as if it was like on a computer screen. So when I hear people can't do that, I'm like, well, that's weird to me. Why can't you do that? That's just my normal. So I think that's part of the human experience, though, too, is that we're all, as much as we're very much alike, we're all so different.
Yeah.
And getting those different, inputs or experiences in are what help, and sharing them is what helps all of us. So, to your point, to kind of come back to it, is I think a part of it is the experience and then being able to get those things out. But I'm also when I first started, was if then type of thinking. I've always believed that it's not an if then, because then you're like, well, it's not going to happen. It's a when then. It's just, when is the next one going to happen? Because in that case, I'm not worried about it. Now I'm just confident that something like this is going to happen in the future. I don't know when it is, but I'm prepared for it because I've gone through those different things. And I may not have gone through that exact scenario, but I've gone through several that are similar, and I'm just going to be able to react in the moment and pick out that file that says, do this or do that, depending on whatever it is. And if something else roadblocks me, then I can, bifurcate off of that to something else.
I don't know if you recognize that that is mental training summed up, right? Like you're
Sure.
making that choice to rewire your brain, because our brains are actually wired to look for the danger. I'll put that in quotes, look for the danger, to look for the negative. Like our brains are wired to do that. And so for you to be like, it's not if then, it's when then, and looking for the positives, and you're training your brain. And then those things will start to, I don't like to say manifest, because I feel like everyone rolls their eyes at me when I say like words that feel woo, but they start to show themselves more frequently. And we talk about this a lot, like the red car theory, where it's like the more you start to look for things, good or bad, the more those things become apparent in your life. And so I think that everything that we've talked about so far is really associated with wellness, and how can we have more awareness? How can we have more conversations like this, more education, understanding the why? And then how can we implement things moving forward that are going to have a positive impact on thriving, like you said, not just surviving. And you told me earlier that you have this mindset that you want to have these conversations and these trainings with your team as if you're not going to be there tomorrow so that they're prepared for what's next. And so, if today was your last day and you had words of wisdom that you could share with the younger generation, what would it be?
So I think I do that as often as I can. I know my kids probably roll their eyes every time because that you don't know when those opportunities won't be there again. I've always had that mindset from the get-go of here's like a manual to go through stuff on this program or whatever it might be. And as I came up through the ranks, there were a lot of things where I was that point person. The way people looked at it would be like, did you get a job somewhere else? Where are you going? And I'm like, no, that's not what I'm doing. I just want to make sure that you guys are set should something happen. I've always looked at it as tomorrow's never guaranteed. None of us are guaranteed that. So live today as if it's not guaranteed tomorrow is one of them. Um, we've rarely regretted the things that we did do versus the things that we didn't do. So take those opportunities, take those shots. As Michael Jordan said, you miss every shot you don't take. So take the shots, work on those, mental fitness type of things, just as you do your physical fitness. You got to remember the mind body connection that's there and exercise them both. And make sure that you stay grounded. For me, that grounding thing is where my wife and I were just talking the last couple of days, and it was I've got these couple of things to do, and I laughed and I said, I'm a big deal. And I got the laugh and I got when you come home, you're just Dad and Dave. And I said, no, that's correct. And one of my grounding things is I never lost track or connection with my friends that I had from high school and college. I'm still connected with them to this day. I text back and forth with them probably on average of once a week. I'm going to say a word that I'm sorry if we're swearing, but they don't give a shit what I do. I'm still Dave. Some of them are in executive level things too, and I don't care what they do. And to have somebody come back and just treat you as a normal human keeps us all grounded. So make sure you're having those grounding pieces along the way, whatever it might be. It's working out several times a week, taking your dog for a walk, having those connections that keep you grounded as to who you are deep down as a person, not your position. So do that. Make sure you keep that balance. Don't always just be into work. Have a good balance between work and life. And remember your purpose behind things as you go through it. And don't forget why you're doing what you do.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I feel like we could have talked for another hour, but I had to cut it. So I really appreciate you coming on here and talking to me today. Thank you.
Not a problem. Thanks for having me.
Of course.